So, listen to this. People still say Antoine Griezmann failed at Barcelona like it's a closed case. Like the fee was the crime and the stats were the verdict. Yet the strangest part of that story isn't what he did in a Barca shirt. It's what Barcelona thought they were buying. Because Griezmann was a superstar who could fit almost any system in Europe except the one he was bought for. And once you see why, the word failure starts sounding like a lazy headline, not an explanation.
People usually ask the same question when a big transfer doesn't work. Why did the player fail? But that question already assumes something broke inside the player. With Antoine Griezmann, nothing broke. His understanding of space didn't disappear. His timing didn't suddenly collapse. His intelligence didn't fade. What changed was the environment that once knew how to use those qualities and then suddenly didn't. Griezmann was never designed to dominate football matches through volume. He was not a winger who lived on the touchline, and he was never a striker who measured his worth by shots alone. His entire career was built on reading moments before they arrived, on moving into spaces others hadn't noticed yet, and on doing work that made the system stronger rather than louder. He was the kind of player who made football easier for everyone else, not more spectacular for himself. At Atlético Madrid, that made him indispensable. At Barcelona, it made him expendable. This is where the story quietly changes direction, because Barcelona didn't sign a player who needed freedom. They signed a player who needed clarity, and those two things are often confused at the highest level. Freedom looks attractive on paper, but intelligence only survives when a system tells it exactly where it belongs. Griezmann didn't need the ball more. He needed a role that existed. And that is why the real question of this case file isn't why Griezmann struggled in Catalonia. It's why Barcelona believed he was the answer to a problem they never properly defined. To understand that, we have to go back to the place where Griezmann made the most sense. Not statistically, not narratively, but structurally. We have to go back to Atlético Madrid.
At Atlético Madrid, Antoine Griezmann was never asked to be a symbol. He was asked to be a solution, and that difference changed everything. Under Diego Simeone, Atlético was built as a system of survival, where freedom was secondary to responsibility, and where every movement had a consequence. In that environment, intelligence wasn't optional. It was the currency that kept the team alive. Griezmann didn't shine because he was indulged. He shone because he was trusted. Simeone understood that Griezmann's greatest weapon wasn't pace or power, but timing. Knowing when to press so the block could move up together. Knowing when to drop deep so midfielders could advance. Knowing when to attack the box, not because he was the striker, but because the moment demanded it. He operated as a hybrid, somewhere between a 9 and a 10, but labels mattered less than function. When Atlético defended deep, Griezmann became the first outlet. When they countered, he decided whether the attack should explode or breathe. When they needed control, he slowed the game without ever touching the spotlight. His intelligence was never decorative, it was structural. This is the part the narrative often misses. Griezmann did not need constant touches to influence matches. He influenced them by removing chaos, by making sure everyone else arrived where they were supposed to arrive. Atlético's wide players stretched the pitch, the midfield protected zones, the backline stayed compact, and in the middle of all that discipline, Griezmann was the connector that made the system feel human. At Atlético, he didn't have to search for relevance. The structure guaranteed it. His decisions mattered because the team was built to respond to them. That's why he didn't look like a superstar trying to dominate games. He looked like a player who belonged exactly where he was. And that is what makes the next chapter so revealing. Because when Griezmann left Atlético, he didn't leave a system that no longer suited him. He left a system that knew exactly who he was. And he walked into one that already had its answers.
Barcelona was not a place searching for identity when Antoine Griezmann arrived. It was a place protecting one. The system was not unfinished. It was settled, repeated, and emotionally owned. Every attacking rhythm already had a reference point. Every important space on the pitch already belonged to someone. And the team did not adapt to new intelligence. It absorbed it or erased it. Messi ball was no longer a tactical choice. It was an ecosystem. The right half space was sacred. The central pocket was controlled. The tempo of the game rose and fell according to one gravity. In that environment, roles were not negotiated, they were inherited. Griezmann didn't arrive as a missing piece. He arrived as a duplicate, not in quality, but in space. He wasn't a winger who could stretch the touchline without consequence. He wasn't a classic nine who could live between center backs. And he could never replace Messi, because Messi was not a position, he was the system itself. So Griezmann drifted, not because he lacked confidence, not because he was confused, but because there was nowhere left to stand without stepping on someone else's meaning. His instinct to drop deep brought him into zones that were already occupied. His desire to connect slowed a rhythm that wasn't built to wait. His intelligence without the ball became invisible, because Barcelona did not function as a collective organism the way Atlético did. This is where perception turns into distortion. Griezmann didn't stop understanding football. Football at Barcelona stopped asking him the questions he was designed to answer. He was judged by goals, but deployed as a connector, measured by presence, but asked to disappear, expected to adapt endlessly, yet never given a role that truly existed. Match after match, the same quiet reality repeated itself. This was not a failure of form, it was a failure of function. Not because Griezmann played badly, but because the system had no language for what he offered. And once you accept that, the story can no longer end with tactics or performances. Because if Griezmann didn't fit Barcelona's structure, the real mystery isn't why he struggled on the pitch, it's why Barcelona decided to buy him anyway.
Barcelona didn't buy Antoine Griezmann because the system demanded him. They bought him because the moment demanded reassurance. At that stage, the club was no longer operating purely on football logic. It was operating on symbolism, on image, on the need to prove that power, attraction, and control still belonged to them. Activating Griezmann's release clause was not the result of a tactical gap on a whiteboard. It was the result of fear. Fear of letting a world-class player strengthen someone else. Fear of admitting that the era of effortless dominance was slipping. Fear of standing still while rivals moved forward. So Barcelona did what institutions under pressure often do. They collected a name instead of defining a role. Griezmann represented safety on paper, a World Cup winner, a proven big-game player, a superstar whose resume could silence doubt in press conferences and headlines. But football does not respond to reassurance. Once the noise fades, the pitch asks a simpler question than any narrative ever could. Where do you belong? Barcelona never answered that. Griezmann wasn't signed to solve a structural problem. He was signed to protect a story. And when narrative replaces necessity, the player becomes collateral. Not because he lacks quality, but because the system was never built to listen to him. This wasn't a bad transfer in isolation. It was a symptom of a club buying against its own structure, of a system too rigid to adapt, yet too insecure to say no. In that environment, the most intelligent players are often the first to disappear, because intelligence needs definition to survive. Griezmann didn't fail Barcelona. Barcelona exposed the difference between wanting a player and needing one. And once you see that, this case file stops being only about Griezmann. It starts pointing at something much bigger.
Zoom out, and Antoine Griezmann's story stops looking like an anomaly. It starts to look like a pattern that modern football keeps repeating. We say we value intelligence, but only when it comes wrapped in dominance. We praise players who control matches through volume, through constant touches, through visible authority. But players who control games through timing, positioning, and sacrifice often disappear the moment the system no longer protects them. Big clubs are the most dangerous environments for this kind of intelligence, not because the level is too high, but because hierarchy replaces harmony. Roles are not created through need, they are inherited through status.
And when a team is built around a single gravitational force, everyone else is asked to orbit, adapt, or fade quietly. Griezmann's problem was never adaptation. In fact, it was the opposite. He adapted too well. He adjusted his movements. He sacrificed space. He accepted secondary roles. But in an ecosystem that rewards dominance over function, adaptation becomes invisibility. Intelligence becomes silence. This is why players like Griezmann thrive in clearly defined systems and struggle in symbolic ones. Atletico needed his decisions to survive. Barcelona already had its answers. One environment amplified his understanding of the game, the other drowned it out. Griezmann didn't lose his footballing mind in Barcelona. Nothing inside him broke. What broke was the connection between intelligence and purpose. And when that connection disappears, even the smartest players begin to look lost. Which brings us to the final question of this case file. Not just about Griezmann, but about how football chooses who succeeds and who gets remembered.
So, when people say Antoine Griezmann failed at Barcelona, they're not entirely wrong, but they are answering the wrong question. He failed to fit. He failed to dominate. He failed to become the story. And in modern football, those three failures often get confused with one thing: lack of quality. But Griezmann never lacked quality. He lacked a system that knew what to do with it. He was never meant to be the center of gravity. He was meant to make gravity work. He was a player designed to connect, to balance, to sacrifice, to arrive 1 second earlier than everyone else expected. And in a structure already collapsing under its own weight, there was no space left for that kind of intelligence to exist. Maybe Barcelona didn't misunderstand Griezmann. Maybe they understood him perfectly, but couldn't admit that they didn't need him. And maybe the real failure wasn't a quiet season or an awkward fit, but the moment football started confusing intelligence with weakness and adaptation with irrelevance. So here is the case file question, left intentionally unanswered. Did Antoine Griezmann fail at Barcelona, or was Barcelona never built for him?